Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Talking Cryptocurrency podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rigdon. On this episode of the show, we're talking to Alex Hardy from the Proof of Take newsletter. But before we get to the interview, I've got this quick message. You are a podcast listener and you're interested in crypto. Otherwise, why would you be listening to this show, right? Have you tried looking for new crypto and blockchain podcasts to listen to? If you've used Google, then you've probably found a whole bunch of clickbait articles. Top 10 lists that just list the same podcasts over and over again. And most of those podcasts aren't even active anymore. If you use iTunes, then you probably got a whole bunch of irrelevant results. The iTunes search function is absolutely awful. It's kind of like using Alta Vista in the 1990s. Keyword stuffing has made it almost unusable. So I made a site to fix this problem. Just go to crypto.podcastlist.net. On the site, you'll find a comprehensive list of all the active podcasts covering the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and other decentralization technologies. This is not a curated list of my favorite shows. This list is intended to be complete. I want to list every single show that is focused on this industry. I've got about 75 active shows on the list already. Please let me know if I have missed any shows. This list is also covered by a Creative Commons license, so feel free to reuse it and share it. Check out crypto.podcastlist.net if you are looking for new crypto and blockchain podcasts. And if you have your own show, please check and make sure you are listed. Once again, the site is crypto.podcastlist.net. Please check it out and tell me what you think. Hello, and on this episode, I'm here with Alex Hardy of the Proof of Take newsletter. How are you doing today?
Hey, Jason. Great to be on.
So could you tell me a little bit about the problems you're trying to solve with this newsletter?
Absolutely. I started this newsletter out of my own frustration, really, of not enough evergreen resources within the world of crypto and blockchain to adequately learn from. Much of the content that I was finding on Twitter and Reddit and just on the internet was really what I would call fast content. So it was kind of like fast food. It was quickly expiring and really not very evergreen or timeless. And I think that there's so many important kind of fundamental concepts and subject matter areas that are required to really develop an understanding for the world of blockchain that I wanted to help create a digestible way for the average person to understand those concepts.
So you're doing this with a newsletter. What made you decide to do a newsletter?
I wanted to have a somewhat regular cadence of interactions with the readers, and I've despite how email may sometimes be looked at as kind of a thing of the past, showing up in someone's inbox every day where they don't really have a choice but to engage with your content is still a pretty effective way to build an audience and to get in front of people. A bunch of my somewhat close friends have been really successful at building an audience through various forms of social media, and pretty much each one has said that the email newsletter is kind of a really invaluable means to have a daily or weekly connection, and that the open rates and click rates and engagement rates are just quite high as compared to blasting stuff out on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that.
Yeah, the social media sites, they really control you. They want you to pay money to get your audience, whereas newsletters are a little bit more natural.
Yeah, exactly.
So with an email newsletter, I have heard some people have had some difficulties having cryptocurrency newsletters. Have you ran into this at all?
Fortunately, I haven't. When I was evaluating which newsletter providers to use, I had looked at a few. I use a product called Substack, which I've found to be fantastic. Gotten really personalized and white glove service from Hamish and Nathan, who are the two co-founders of it. And they've proven to be incredibly crypto friendly. I do know that providers like MailChimp and some of the others have said that they're kind of in a blanket statement banning any type of crypto content, which is you can't see, but I'm shaking my head at that. So yeah, I did my research, and it seemed that Substack had some really good, some other really good crypto newsletters on it, and so that to me, when I was testing out some different platforms, seemed like the best way to go. So that's how I landed on them.
Seems like the real feature of these newsletters is the curation you're doing, the time you're saving the readers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of the reason that I was so interested in doing it is that a lot of this studying and learning and synthesizing was work that I was doing anyway. So I figured, why not kind of pay it forward and open source my thoughts, for one, to help other people learn, but for another, it really helps me kind of clarify my opinions and point of views, which obviously change a lot over time. But there's no better way to learn something yourself than to try and teach it and explain it to someone else.
And curation is so important in this space because there's so much, it's going to sound mean, but there's so much very, very low quality content out there that's hard to churn through it sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a double-edged sword in a sense, where you are, it's almost intimidating to start something because there's so much content out there that you think, oh, wow, how can I ever possibly break through? But you'd be amazed that just being, of somewhat high quality, you're already kind of putting yourself above a lot of what's out there. There's both a ton of content, but also a somewhat low bar to get quality engagement from a quality audience.
Yeah, I rant about this quite a bit, about these bounty programs that kind of compensate people to, write blog posts, and you just see so many of these posts, but they really don't say anything. They just kind of oftentimes restate what the website says.
Yeah. There's kind of the aggregators out there of who, we've seen it in the news world of sites that are just really just aggregation of what other people have written. And I think to an extent, there's a lot of crypto content that is kind of recycling a lot of, again, what is already out there, no real original thought or new point of view. And part of what I wanted to, why I started the newsletter as well, was that I thought that it would be an interesting exercise for me to try and put a creative or different spin on a lot of the old, tired metaphors that are out there, of trying to explain what a blockchain is, or what proof of work is, or some of these concepts that are, that are somewhat tired, as far as what the platitudes that people use to try and explain them. I think that perhaps a fresh voice might be able to bring new people into the space, by using different and hopefully more engaging metaphors.
So when I subscribe to your newsletter, what can I expect to be receiving?
So I'm attempting to do a weekly or biweekly post on a concept that an important what I would call foundational concept of crypto. And I've the first couple were kind of about things like what is money. So I did a 2-part series on just zooming way, way, way out and trying to understand what is money and why is it important. I did a post recently on operational security. So no matter which crypto you believe is going to be the best, how can you safeguard your digital holdings and your digital identity, and why is that important? And so I kind of want to start with really basic foundational building blocks, and give the readers assume very little to zero knowledge from the readers, and deliver them some of these lessons in a fun, engaging way using emojis and GIFs and language of the millennial and Gen Z generation that they can appreciate, and that they would enjoy reading on their phone on their commute to work, or in a spare 5 to 10 minutes, that can help them actually learn something too. Maybe infotainment, I think, is kind of what they call it these days.
So very welcoming to newcomers to this space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that I found to be somewhat intimidating as I was first getting into cryptocurrency. That you know, there's so much knowledge that it takes to get up to speed and to be really conversant that certain pockets of Twitter or the internet are not as welcoming to newcomers and not as understanding of the mistakes that people make in their quest to learn more. So I think that it's very important for the adoption of Bitcoin to have the next, 100 million people own some. And the best way to do that is going to be getting them, helping them understand it in a way that, in a new way, because a lot of the ways that this technology has kind of been explained or tried to onboard folks in the last decade, hasn't stuck for everyone. So I think it can't hurt to experiment and try a new and perhaps more fun and targeted at kind of the average person, not necessarily the hardcore technologist or hardcore finance person.
One of the hardest things about trying to introduce newcomers to space is just this idea of the basic concepts of the blockchain are oftentimes so counterintuitive. They almost think it's magic.
Yeah. It's really thinking about the how and the why of our financial system is something that people don't really do very often. I found that in my own journey, I took a lot of things, of aspects of how the financial system works for granted, how the banking system works and why it works and who's in control of it and how they're in control of it. And so to think through why I would want to change that and what a way to change that would be is just really kind of, it kind of like rocks your world in a sense. So yeah, I totally agree that, it's tough to wrap your head around because one, it's completely foreign. And then for another, in some ways you could say, okay, but if we have this existing system that works pretty well for me as a Westerner, in my specific situation, then why should I even care or bother to try and get interested in it?
So what have been some of your biggest challenges in developing this newsletter?
Writing is tough. And writing on a regular cadence just takes a lot of discipline. Life can get in the way, and so staying dedicated to it is sometimes a challenge. I think I have a high bar for myself of the quality of content that I want to publish, and so I have erred on the side of waiting to publish until I've had what I deem to be a good idea or a good post. Whereas I think I should have more of a bias towards just publishing regularly, seeing what sticks, and have it be a little bit more, and having a tolerance for maybe, not a Pulitzer award worthy post.
Yeah, it's so hard to find that balance.
Yeah, totally. But my readership has been super supportive, and most of the articles have gotten pretty good feedback. So it's always very nice to hear that reassurance.
So what are some of your plans for the future going forward?
I'm working on a new metaphor for the blockchain. We've all heard that that the blockchain is a shared ledger or a shared database. And I think that going down that road of kind of explaining it as if a group of people could share a ledger that kept track of all their account balances and transactions, has somewhat outlived its usefulness as far as trying to explain what exactly this is to people. So I've got a couple of creative ideas that I'm still putting the finishing touches on for how to better explain that to folks. I also have a couple of other of ideas around, again, probably a follow-up post for how to custody your private keys, and a few other interesting things in the pipeline as far as lessons I've learned from falling down the crypto rabbit hole.
Do you see any trends in the industry right now that really interest you?
So I've really gravitated towards what most people would call Bitcoin maximalism. I've the more that I learn about Bitcoin, the more just unbelievably blown away I am by how clever and ingenious it was, and how convinced I am that it's going to be really difficult for any other cryptocurrency to beat its origin story and its head start that it has. Not to say that it's impossible, and I tend to think of things probabilistically, but I just have by far the most conviction in that as compared to almost any other project out there. So I fortunately for my wallet, my financial perspective, did not really participate in any of the ICO craze that we saw over the past 18 months or so. I was basically a quote unquote no coiner, and then I gravitated right towards Bitcoin. So, as far as trends that I've noticed, I think there are a lot of other seemingly other projects that are growing in popularity, and other memes that are gaining in popularity. But for me personally, I'm focused and have the most excited about what's happening in Bitcoin and those layers that are being built on top of it.
Well, is there anything that I should have asked you that maybe I missed?
I guess one thing that I did that I have thought a lot about is kind of how to get more people who might not otherwise use cryptocurrency into this space. And I thought from my perspective that doing this in a fun way that incorporates my own voice and an accessible kind of easy to use voice in a newsletter is a format that's interesting. But another I've thought a lot about what other ways of education can we use to get people to appreciate and understand the power of this disruptive technology. And I thought a lot about an online course potentially that would involve teaching people how to use operational security and set up a hardware wallet and custody their keys properly, and how to do some types of crypto estate planning and things in that vein. But I'm always interested in thinking about the educational side of things and how to potentially get more people exposure and bring on and onboard the next set of users. So yeah, I mean, I think this newsletter is going to be my kind of first entree into trying to do that. But I do have, even beyond the newsletter, some plans for things like courses and other materials that I'm hoping I'll be able to share with some of your audience and hopefully a broader swath of people to try and help them cut through a lot of the noise in crypto and really get to what can be important and transformative.
That accessibility is key. I just imagine there are just people every day who go to Google, put in Bitcoin, and then just get frustrated and walk away.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that I've come to learn that the least interesting part of Bitcoin to me is the price at this point. And I think that's an acquired view. I don't think it's the view that most people have. I don't think it's the view that the news coverage has. If you look at most news sources, price action is really the first thing that anyone covers. And for me, I'm thinking on a 10, a 15, a 20 year time horizon of reinventing money. So the day-to-day price is really insignificant and not super substantial to me. So I think, a lot of what gets covered in the popular press, like the price action, the mystery of who is Satoshi, things like that, I kind of laugh when I see them, because when you fully appreciate the power of of what we're doing in reinventing money and separating, this represents the separation of money and state. And, it's just funny how people treat it like a stock price or a reality show of trying to figure out who Satoshi Nakamoto was.
Yeah, they keep on trotting out the same stories over and over and over again, but I very rarely see them get into those like fundamental, like even just the philosophical or the economic issues of these cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I think that as with almost every news provider, the folks that cover cryptocurrency news are in a bind because the advertising model online compensates them for getting page clicks and getting engagement, and the things that are going to do that are the price action or other kind of salacious and short-lived things in the 24-hour news cycle. I mean, crypto is not alone in experiencing that pain. I think almost all the news in the world, including politics and sports and everything else, is really beholden to eyeballs and page views. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully, slowly but surely, people will gravitate towards or be interested in sources that are that cut through that a bit.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, Jason, this was excellent. I really appreciate it. And I would love to interact with anyone in the audience who's interested in learning more. I'm at Can't Hardy Wait on Twitter, CANTHARDYWAIT. And you can sign up for my newsletter, Proof of Take. It's proofoftake.substack.com.
Fantastic. I'll make sure to have all those links in the show notes too. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Take care.
Thanks, Alex, for coming to the show. I highly suggest that you subscribe to the Proof of Take newsletter. Alex does a fantastic job. If you want more information about the newsletter, check the show notes. The links are all going to be right down there. You've been listening to the Talking Cryptocurrency podcast. My name is Jason Reagan, and I have been your host. Thank you for listening to the show. If you liked it, would you please consider giving us a rating and a review on iTunes? I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day.